Okay, everybody, it's about that time, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. So today's webinar is on executive dashboards, creating a heart rate monitor for your business. And let's find out what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to talk about the beginning of executive information systems, the precursor to the executive dashboard, how the needs of today's executives are changing, a great demo that George is going to do for us, showing the power of PIM boards, and definitely how to effectively use the mobile executive dashboard, which is really important in today's environment. So before we do that, let's talk a little bit about SME. Who are we? Well, at the end of the day, we are a data analytics integration firm. We were founded in 2011 by our CEO, Chris Moyer, and we have a whole bunch of services that include BI integration, data governance, data literacy, project management, and even hosting. We work in a bunch of different verticals, which you can see here. Retail and entertainment for sure. Chris Moore got his start in energy and utility. We've been doing that the longest, but we also work in FinServe. You can see a couple companies we work with: professional services, healthcare and life services, agribusiness and manufacturing, and of course, public sector and education. So your host for today. Well, you've got myself, Brian Misseri, as well as George Barrett, who I just mentioned, and he'll be with us in just a minute or two to go into the demo. So I'm a digital strategist here at SME, but I've also been a small business owner for the past 9 years. I am definitely what I would consider to be a data literacy advocate. I've done a few webinars as well as presentations on data literacy, and I love to talk about it. But I'm also a former firefighter. I've been married for 13 years, and I have an 8, just about to be 9-year-old daughter. George is our solutions engineer at SME. He went to the University of Florida and he started working for SME back in 2015. And he's got a pretty extensive background in BI, database administration, and interface design. So like I said, he'll be with us in just a minute. Okay, so before we get to that demo, let's just do a little bit of overview. So how did we get here? Well, it really started with studies done in the 1970s, and actually even before that, in the 50s and 60s, by the Carnegie University of Technology. And they'd done a bunch of studies on digital dashboards and decision support systems. And really, that's sort of where we started if we look at sort of the birth of that, what we now know as the executive dashboard. But in the 80s, the executive information systems gained a lot of popularity. Obviously, computers were on the rise in the use of personal computers, but as you can imagine, they were often plagued with inconsistencies. And so really the idea of a really truly efficient executive dashboard sort of lied dormant, not to say they weren't used, but they really started to pick up steam again in the 90s. And technology made it much more possible to have accurate KPIs and other metrics that we now associate with that executive dashboard. Now, in the late 1990s, this idea of a digital nervous system came to be. And Bill Gates made it popular, but he wasn't the one that came up with it. And what he really was talking about, and others talked about, is how a business is similar to a human nervous system. So here's something that Steve Ballmer said in an attempt to explain what the digital nervous system might be. He said, if you think of the human body, what does our nervous system let us do? It lets us hear, see, take input. It lets us think and analyze and plan. It lets us make decisions and communicate and take action. Every company essentially has a nervous system. Companies take inputs, they think, they plan, they communicate, they take action. The question is, how does a nervous system in your company operate? Is the IT infrastructure really adding value? So I think it's a great quote. And then Bill Gates himself also talked about it in a keynote speech he made back in 1998. And he just talks about always having the information you need. You're alert to the most important things. So I think this is a really good analogy. And why the reason I bring this up now is I think maybe along the way we sort of lost this initial concept, and our executive dashboards today don't necessarily do the things that we initially said we wanted them to do. So the origins of the dashboard design. Well, on the left here, you actually have a picture of a Piper Cherokee Warrior. And it's an airplane that I actually flew back when I was in college. For a while, I took some airplane flying lessons. And while I never did get my pilot's license, I did get far enough that I was able to take off and land by myself. Truly, honestly, so glad I did it. One of the greatest thrills is flying at 1,200 feet above an airport in Athens, Georgia, and having to land the plane on your own. So this is the instrument panel, and as you can imagine, this dashboard is very similar to the idea of a digital dashboard. Also, the idea came from, car dashboards as well. But you get the idea. We have a whole bunch of gauges in front of us that are telling us a whole bunch of important things. But in this case, in the Piper Cherokee Warrior, and this is probably like a late 1960s model, we don't really have a choice on what we want to look at, right? We have to kind of have every gauge has to be in front of us. A whole bunch of KPIs, if you will. Now here on the right is an Airbus A380. Now, on this one, we're actually looking at a much different scenario. Yes, there's still a ton of dashboards and things going on, as you would imagine, for the complicating process of flying a plane. Although I will point out that there's no longer a yoke. They fly by that joystick on the left and right, which is pretty amazing. But really what you have here is 8 identical sort of Tesla-looking monitors or screens in front of you. And those screens can change depending on what the pilot wants to see and what's important at that time. And I love this analogy because it really kind of shows the path that we're going, not with our digital dashboards, right? We're going from looking at having to see every KPI, every metric, to going to a point where we can look at the metrics that are most important to us, or in this case, the pilot at that time. Actually, really cool. If you look up, you see that sort of almost like Aurora Borealis there at the top, that green. That's actually a heads-up display that they use for takeoff and landing that I sort of found out when I was looking at this picture. So just kind of a cool feature that I didn't even know existed. Okay, so let's move on. What are the characteristics what are the characteristics? What characteristics should an executive dashboard have? I'll get it one of these times, guys. All right, well, I think there's a couple things that we can all pretty much agree on. We want it to be visual, but we don't want it to be too busy, right? Or overly stylized. We see that a lot of times. Heck, we've even been guilty of it. Making sure that it serves its purpose, right? And I'll tell you a quick story about this. One of our customers that we love, our clients that we love a ton, is Port Tampa Bay. And their financial department were the ones that originally started creating dashboards, and we were helping with them. And their first dashboards were, as you would imagine, very impressive to look at. But when the executives at the Port Tampa Bay first looked at it, it didn't quite go over as well. So I think everybody runs into this trap. Sometimes it's just fun to play with the shiny new object. And they had to go back and reinvent the executive dashboard to be more user-friendly for the executives that were actually using it. So just sort of a funny story, exactly this. Now, we needed to be flexible to meet the needs of today, not every day. And I really emphasize every day because what I'm trying to say here is an executive dashboard should be what's most important right now. If it's something that was created 6 months ago, or it's somewhat static and isn't able to bend at the will of what's going on in the organization today or what that particular executive wants to see, then it's not going to be as effective. It definitely needs to be personalized to maximize the greatest benefit of the user. This is really important. Creating a dashboard that works for the aggregated total sum of users, right? An aggregated amount of users that might see it doesn't make it personalized. And what ends up happening is it paints people into a corner where they're not maybe able to freely think and express how they normally would because they're constrained by the particular dashboard and the way it will move. That could be a big problem. It needs to be quick, and it needs to save time and identify outliers, correlations, and negative trends for sure. And finally, it needs to be accurate, right? That's a no-brainer. There should be no second guessing the data-driven decisions that are being made, because ultimately, what good is any executive dashboard or any dashboard in general if you're not going to trust the information that's coming into it and the decisions you're making out of it if you're second guessing it? It's not very effective, right? All right, so this was actually an executive dashboard's Google Images search that I did 45 minutes ago, actually. So this is what you would find right now if you did this search. And I wanted to bring this up and share this picture, not because I'm trying to trash it or not because that's the intent of this webinar at all. In fact, we make We're pretty much tool agnostic, right? At SME, we make dashboards that fit the user all the time. That's what we do. And a lot of times, executive dashboards do exactly look like these. Nothing wrong with that. Again, if the one on the top left there worked the best for that particular executive, well, then that's the one that should probably be built. But what we're going to show here in a second, and what George is about to jump in and show, is really what we kind of see the future, or how executive dashboards are moving or progressing more to that personalized touch. And that's what George is about to touch on. But I kind of wanted to show this image because I think it's interesting to see, if you will, what Google will pull back as the, hey, this is what we think an executive dashboard currently is. And now let's switch over to a product demo that George is about to pick up on. And we're going to talk about, where we think these executive dashboards are going. Or a lot of times, George and I have been calling it 2.0, right? What's the future of executive dashboards as we see it? So George, if you will, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brian. Now I'm going to show how we can leverage a tool like ThoughtSpot to build the perfect executive dashboard. However, the word dashboard is more of a misnomer, because what I'm going to show is how we can move away from the one-size-fits-all to the more personalized experience through a pinboard. In our example today, our executive created a pinboard consisting of multiple searches across their retail sales dataset. These searches are individually all valuable insights for the business, but having them grouped in a pinboard maximizes their effectiveness. You will see how just because a search has been pinned, the analysis does not stop. And in some cases, this is only the beginning of the analytical journey. The great thing about building pinboards in ThoughtSpot is that you can leverage saved answers and visualizations from other pinboards in your own pinboard. With this collaborative ability, anyone can quickly and easily create a dashboard that is highly customized to what they need to analyze. So let's take a look at the retail sales executive dashboard.
Yeah, and George, before we dive in, I think it's worth noting that, this is just one particular use case when we're talking about executive dashboards. But, pinboards really serve a lot of purposes, and they really can be used by anyone in the organization.
Absolutely, Brian. And you can see here that the dashboard is shared with other users, extending the analysis beyond the executives to their analysts. So right off the bat, I have what's called pinboard insights. These are correlations, anomalies, and interesting facts about my data that the SpotIQ artificial intelligence engine finds. They are all related to the data coming from and related to my pinboards. This helps kickstart the analysis by telling the user what is standing out in the data. This could also be something that would be considered hard to find through normal analysis, so it's great to get the AI helping hand.
Yeah, and George, before you go any farther, are these insights static, or do they change over time?
That's a great point, Brian. So all of your data, including the insights and the visualizations, really all your objects on your pinboard will refresh whenever you reload the data, so you're always on top of it. So at the top of my pinboard are my global filters. I can add as many filters as I want, and I can use them to narrow down the results of my pinboard. You see that when I filter on this particular store, all of my data updates automatically. And if I need to add another filter, I can easily go over here to the add filters and add something such as date. So underneath my filters are my 4 KPIs that drive value in my business. Each of these resulted from the search of a single metric. I use them to track company goals, and unfiltered, they're pretty high level, but when filtered down, I can really feel the pulse of how my business is doing. So now we're moving into the visualizations, starting with my most important one and the one that I make an effort to check every day. It is the top 20 stores by their sales and the number of customers. There's a lot of value in this single visualization. I use 2 metrics in the same graph to see the correlation between the two, and if they act as drivers for each other. Combining this with the store and region filters, I can see which stores are performing best, so I can target and analyze why they are doing so well and how we can replicate the results across the other stores. And below this visualization are 2 visualizations related to my individual stores. Notice how I have different sizing options so that I can get my ideal view. This tree map brings in sales per square foot, which is an excellent way of figuring out which stores are utilizing their space and layout most effectively. This map shows the lowest performing stores in the previous month. This is useful in that we can drill into these states to figure out if this is a trend across multiple stores or just an isolated incident. This is as easy as right-clicking the state and selecting the drill down and picking which field I need to drill down into. You see how it instantly creates a new visualization on the fly. From here, we conduct a root cause analysis and make improvements as necessary. These next two colorful visualizations don't have a lot of numbers on them. In fact, from first glance, you may wonder where the value is. However, in the eyes of our executive, these contain some of the most powerful insights in the quickest way. The one on the left shows customer growth over a rolling 12-month period. I created two conditional reference lines to see when growth hits peak highs and lows. I can easily switch between monthly, quarterly, or yearly on the fly just by selecting this. I can also edit the visualization. This takes me to the search bar where I can adjust the filters and add more fields. The goal of the reference line is, again, to figure out where we did exceptionally well or poor during certain time periods. I can easily identify this just by looking at it. Similarly, the double pie chart on the right is a visual comparison chart. The outer circle shows our gross margin percentage breakout based off of departments, while the inner circle shows it for all time. I can easily compare departments across the two pies to see if there's a heavy variance. For instance, I can easily tell here that the bakery category grew just by looking at it. And when I hover over it, it confirms that with a 7% increase.
Yeah, and George, I'll just jump in here too and just say I love that you added these two visualizations to the executive dashboard because it really shows that, unlike sort of the old dashboards that we're used to seeing, it doesn't have to be just a long page of KPIs, right? There's actually a lot of value here. I love that you can, on the pie chart, you can quickly see that there's a difference. And I bet you could probably just drill down really quickly in there as well.
Yep, you can continue your analysis just like I showed earlier. So this waterfall chart tracks my adjusted gross margin and expenses. But there's something unique about it. It's the only chart that does not belong to my retail sales worksheet that's powering the rest of my visualizations. So Pinboards can include visualizations from any data source that I have, so they really can be a one-stop shop for anything that I need to analyze across my entire business. And in this case, I'm looking at my financials in the same dashboard as my retail performance. Now up to this point, I've been pinning visualizations that I created through my own searches. But this bar chart breaks that mold because it was generated through a SpotIQ analysis of my data worksheet. We've seen SpotIQ before at the top of my Pinboard, but you can leverage it outside of Pinboards to generate insightful visuals that you can then add to your Pinboards. So this particular one is showing me a group of products that are heavily outselling the average, which I can confirm is a very powerful insight. And I can toggle back and forth between a table at ease so that I can get a better view. So down here, I have a Pareto chart of the top promotions for the last 6 months. A Pareto chart shows the contribution for each dimension value to the metric. So this promotions and marketing data set was just newly joined to our retail sales worksheet. So you could say that it's still in its infancy. But with this chart, we have a jumping off point. So I'm going to use a new feature of ThoughtSpot, Explore. By using the Explore feature, I'm given recommendations on filters, metrics, and attribute changes, breakouts, and comparisons that I can use to dive deeper into my newly added dataset.
Yeah, George, I actually was just saying on one of our other videos that this Explore feature is definitely my new favorite feature from 5.3 with ThoughtSpot. I love that, like you're doing here, you can just sort of click into other, you can filter down, it gives you suggestions. And more importantly, I love that it's right there in the Pinboard so that, if you are that executive, you don't always want to dive deeper into, and you're not always going to have those questions, but I love that when you are inspired or you do have more questions, it's super easy just to click that Explore button, kind of ask a few questions, and then just as quickly, really, you can make it go away and be right back at your dashboard or your Pinboard. So it makes life really easy. It's definitely one of my favorites.
Absolutely. So up to this point, we've been looking at visualizations and KPIs. But when I want to build my executive dashboard, I keep the concept of DAR in mind. And that is dashboard analysis and reporting. So at the top of my pinboard, I place my KPIs and high-level visualizations that serve as my dashboard, the heart monitor of my business. When we get deeper into the pinboard, we can start conducting more in-depth analysis that provoke drill downs and further explorations. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just need the raw data in a report style like a straight table or pivot table. So here I have a pivot table that shows the breakdown of my stores by region and state in regards to their margins. It groups them into good margins or bad margins, which allows me to pivot down all the way into my stores. In my opinion, this is the best layout for this data and will help me make decisions much, much faster.
Yeah, this is a great example of an executive dashboard, George. I really appreciate you putting this together. I did have a few questions though about sharing the dashboard. So can you talk about how you would or how you share the dashboard with other analysts? Because a lot of times this is information that's going to want to be shared with other people in the organization.
Sure. So you can see that I'm the creator of the dashboard and it's being used by all of these users. But if I need to add another user, I can just go in and hit share and find my users or my groups. And with this, I can also choose if they are able to view or edit it. Because it's my executive dashboard, I only want to give view rights to those who I share it with. But those users can still drill in, make copies of pinned visuals, and continue searching, and it won't affect my version.
Okay, cool. So obviously another option a lot of times is to be able to present on this. So if I just wanted to present this, not necessarily share it through an email or otherwise, but I just wanted to present on it, is there a sort of a fast way to do that as well?
Yeah, there's a presentation mode that you have up here, and this is going to be kind of more of like your traditional slideshow format. But with this, it's still interactive. So as you get to my visualizations, you see that I can hover over it and see what the values are. And if I need to include, exclude, filter, drill down, or show the underlying data, or even use Spot IQ, I can do that straight from the presentation. And the other thing is that I think that we've all been in a situation where we need to print something out. We need to take it to a meeting. We can't use it on our screen. So in ThoughtSpot, you do have the ability to download it as a PDF, and you get a few different options on how you want to configure it.
Yeah, I definitely think, we're showing executive dashboards now, but, think of any use case where somebody maybe has to go into a meeting with a partner or it's a sales opportunity. A lot of times those PDFs are going to be super helpful. Now, is there a way that I can send the presentation out automatically or like on a schedule as well?
Yeah, so there's a feature called Manage Schedules. And what this allows me to do is that I can distribute my PDF pinboard at regular intervals, either through ThoughtSpot or via email. So I can go ahead and say if I wanted this date every day at 5 p.m., I can go ahead and create this schedule and that will be distributed automatically. And what's even better is that I can also apply a specific gating condition. So let's say I want where sales is greater than 100, then the report will not get sent out unless that condition is met.
No, that's really cool. And probably one of the better features of that is that it's out of the box, right? With ThoughtSpot, there's nothing add-on to get that feature. So I really like that. I see that you set up a schedule, but can a user subscribe to pinboards that they interact with frequently?
Right. So earlier I shared it with the demo user. So I have another screen over here where I'm logged in as the demo user. And when I refresh the page, you're going to see that he now has access to my dashboard. So when I'm in here, what I can do is I can go in and follow a pinboard. So when I follow a pinboard, what this allows me to do is to notify me, and you get updates on the pinboard at whatever interval. So in this case, I want to get my pinboard every Thursday at 11:15. And what this does is that this allows me to stay engaged with it. So I'm able to kind of figure out what are my quick hits, what's going on with my pinboard. It's completely interactive.
Yeah, and you really can stay engaged in every single way. It's really amazing. And I know that as, a demo user, you can use objects in the pinboard for your own pinboard, right?
Yeah, so just because they're on this pinboard, I can go ahead and if I need to, I can go and pin them to my own pinboard. So I don't have to do any rework. And this gives me a great way of customizing my dashboard without interrupting the development of the other dashboard.
Okay, so I wanted to pivot here a little bit, George, because obviously everybody wants to be able to access their data at any time of day. If it's truly an executive dashboard, it's really not enough for it to just be on, a desktop version, right? We want to make sure that this is really accessible and usable on mobile, which means on the go outside of the office, and really bringing the analytics to the mobile frontier and having your executive dashboard at your fingertips at all times. So can you maybe paint a picture, George, on like a use case for when this would really be helpful with mobile?
Yeah. So let's say that I'm the regional manager of the Southwest. I need to visit my lowest performing Arizona stores to see where we can make improvements. So I could put together a pin board to take with me on the road that I can access through the mobile app. So the first visualization shows the bottom 5 stores. When I created the pin board, I ran SpotIQ analysis on this visualization and subsequent searches to get insights about each of the stores. By pinning these to my Arizona dashboard, we can look at where stores are doing well or poorly, thus giving them insights on how to correct their situation. I also went ahead and pinned a SpotIQ insight that shows where another store succeeded. Even though this store wasn't in the original visualization, SpotIQ is intelligent enough to show how this insight can have beneficial value for the bottom 5 stores. For the Tempe store, they had extremely high margins during their 2018 Thanksgiving liquidation sale. If our store runs a similar promotion this upcoming Thanksgiving season, they may see similar results.
Yeah, that's actually perfect. And I think it goes to show that mobile is great, but at this point in late 2019, we expect there to be a mobile version of any dashboard and a BI tool. I don't think that's anything revolutionary. What I do love that ThoughtSpot does such a great job of is it was, as you showed, really, really easy to create sort of a dashboard that's actually optimized for mobile. And, when we talk to these executives, that's something that's really, really valuable for them. And you sort of painted the picture clearly that it would be super easy if you were out there on the go and you're sort of literally at that fork in the road. Do I turn left or do I turn right to help my team? That's a great example of it.
Definitely.
So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I really think it shows the value, and like I was saying in some of the intro videos, it's really sort of like that 2.0 version of executive dashboards. Now, if you guys would like to contact us, you can see here on the screen a bunch of different ways. Obviously, you can reach out to us via email, our website. LinkedIn is always a good place. By all means, you can see all our newest videos on YouTube as well. But reach out if you have any questions you'd like to talk to us. You'd like to talk to George more or get a more in-depth demo. That's absolutely possible. Just email us and we'll make sure it happens. So with that, George, I really appreciate your time today. That was an amazing demo, and we'll see you next time, right?